Welcome to the next lesson. Today we're going to be going over forms in HTML. So make your way over to Lenny Roy Codes, and here in HTML4 you have the option of following along via PDF, via this video, the glitch template, or downloading the files. We are going to take a look at the PDF to see what's coming for us in this lesson. We're going to be creating a form tag. We're going to be inputting a couple labels and then a couple different options for how we are going to display some of the features of the form. We won't be using this though, but feel free. We are going to be using the glitch template proper. So click on the glitch template. The first thing you should be able to see is the remix button. Go ahead and click that, and after that you're ready to go. So take a quick look at the same information we just saw in the PDF. We're going to see here in our activity.md file. We will see step 1, create the form. Step 2, create a form grouping. Step 3, adding some more inputs, selecting options, and then radio buttons and checkboxes to finish it off. We're going to be going quick. Feel free to take a look at the resources file to take a look at get more information, more in-depth information on any of the tags. But you won't be using forms that much as a newbie. It definitely takes some practice, just like the tables. It's a little bit archaic and it's been made easier over time, and there's a lot going on, but it doesn't really do that much, and this is all just front end styling of the form. We're not going to get into sending the information until way later on, so just practice this. If you can get it somewhat correct and get the checkboxes and radio buttons to appear, and to get maybe some placeholder text down the line, that should be enough to get started. So we're going to open up our index.html file where we're going to put our code, and I have the instructions open on another screen, but you do it however you feel you can. And we're going to start with step 1, create a form. So it says, after the opening body tag, type the following. So we're going to create a form. I am going to close this out. I'm going to create a form. Okay, form, and remember we're going inside at this point. Let's give it some space since we're going to put a lot in here. And we're going to use a method attribute. You can find more information about this in the resources MD file. And we're going to set that to uppercase post. And the action, which is not going to do anything now, but eventually will tell you what file to run, what PHP file you're going to use to make this form work. You're going to put some filler text in there. Really doesn't matter at this point or for this lesson. So some file.php. And the rest of our business is going to go right in here. And we're done with step 1. Step 2, we're going to create a form grouping. After the opening form tag, after this tag right here, we are going to type the following. So let's create a div, which is just an empty box. We're going to name this form group. And you see how it closes the div for us? Let's bring that in a little bit so that we're on the same page. Looks like we're inside of this div now. And we're going to create a label. These 4 type, name, and ID tags all kind of have to be the same. You'll get a handle on it, right? But we're going to say this label is for the name area. Double space so you can get inside of this label. And as a value, not necessarily a value, but just plain text to put afterwards. So this is what I'm saying about how this is kind of old school. Let's just see what we have so far, right? We have a form, we have a div, and so far we just have one label with this weird name sticking out of it. And we're going to put something else here, that's why this label is not over here. Let's just take a look at what we have so far. That's it. Somewhere around here behind the scenes, some form stuff is happening, but this is all you should be seeing at this point. Why don't you go ahead and check, and if you don't, pause the video right now and make sure you have the correct syntax. If you're ready to keep going, next we're going to put in an input tag with a type. I'm going to leave these empty for now. A name and an ID. And just like the image tag, this is a self-closing tag. So this is what you should see right now when we open it up. So this area right here is the input. And what type is it? Text. So you can put text into it. And now we just have to match the name and the ID attributes to be this one. Now this is a little confusing because of the word name here, but let's make a second one and I think you should be able to see it a little bit better. But let's just put as a name and as ID name, and we're done with step 2 with a label with an input field inside of it and a type of text. Step 3 is completing the form with more inputs. Repeat the previous step and include the following input fields. We're going to make a password and an email. And in both of those cases, the name and the ID are going to change. So let's just look at the syntax here. Appears to be within the same form group. Maybe not, actually. We'll do some trial and error here. I'm going to create a new form group right underneath for each of them. So give myself some room right here. And then again, getting some error messages, might be because the IDs match. The IDs cannot match. Okay, so next we're going to create the password area. So we'll do password. And we're going to match, we're going to keep text the same because it's still asking for text. We're going to change the name to match, in all 3 cases, password. And we're going to give the ID of password as well. Here we're going to be defining an email, which also will take text. We'll change that name to email and change the ID to email. Let's see what we have now. 3 sets of information right here with 3 inputs. Oops. Input 1, input 2, input 3. That's input 1, input 2, and input 3. And then 3 labels right there. So that should pretty much wrap up that one. All we're doing is we're adding 3 form groups to our one form. That's one, that's the second one, and this is the third one. Getting this to line up is part of CSS, or maybe even we could format our code a little bit better to give some equal spacing, but for now, that's okay. We can move on to some ways to modify and enhance our forms using different options. So we're going to use a new tag called select. I'm going to put it right down here. I'm going to name this one age. And now we're inside of that select tag where we're going to use our option tag. You can look into more of what these tags do in the resources MD file, as well as going over things in W3 Schools. But for the purpose of this lesson, the connection between what you're typing and what it is should be apparent once you see it live. For example, in this case, I didn't explain what an input was, but we can tell now that it refers to this right here. It's an open field where you're inputting information. Some of those are easy to figure out like that. This one's a little bit different because it's a label. It's just kind of sitting there alone. There's no closing tag, for example. It looks different than some of the other HTML structures. We've connected via context that this password refers to this piece of text right here, which is prior to the input. So play around with that to make sure it sticks in your head, but it's not the easiest thing. Reading the documentation is one thing. Practicing is another thing, but connecting those two to finally understand what does what is going to just take practice. Same thing with this one. A select doesn't necessarily scream its purpose to you, but once you see what it looks like, it will make sense. Select takes what's maybe an option, would be an attribute or a method. It gets a little tricky at this point. I'm just going to call it, you know what, let's reference the resources. What did we call option? The option tag defines an option in the select list. Okay, so option with a value also defined in the resources file. Going to give that 0 to 30 as the value, and then what's human readable goes here. This is actually more easy to understand than this, for example, because it has an opening and closing tag. We're going to add 2 options to this select field, and the second option will be 31 to 65, with what being human readable over here, 31 to 65. Appears that these should match. Okay, let's see what that looks like. So it's one of these drop down things where you select an option, and each one of those options is referenced as an option inside of a select field. So this is a select, and this is an input, and they're both different types. We have a few more things to do, but we're going to do these ones real quick so you can see the difference. Now I'm going to copy and paste at this point. We're going to create another form group here at the bottom. So let me just clean this up real quick. And we've seen everything already. We've seen a div class holding the whole form group, which is just a box for these three things we put inside of it. And then three inputs, but they're not input type text, they're input type radio. These are radio buttons. We've just named them radio style, that's unimportant, and the value of each one is radio 1, 2, and 3. That's what we should be able to see on the screen. So let's just see what radio means. These buttons. These are radio buttons. When you include an input type radio, this is what you will see. Let's just see if we can give this one a label. Should be the same. See, this might be a little tricky. Can we combine what we learned in the previous example to this one? I think we should. So let's try to wrap it in a label maybe. So now they're all children, so maybe it'll just show up before all three. I kind of wanted it to show up after each one. What do we see? Change that right there to radio. Okay, that's kind of wrapped around all three. It's not really what I wanted. Let me try. I just wanted to show up in front of this first one. We're not going to see the difference there. One more second. This is a little messy, but you get the point. I'm just adding a label to this first one, a label to the second. Let's throw that a 2 there so we can make sure we see the difference. And it should show up. It should be radio, followed by written, followed by radio 2, followed by another radio button. Let's see if that works, and it does. Around with that to get it to so you can understand where the labels come into play and what the different kinds of inputs are. I'm going to teach you one last one. Remember, we've done all this inside of our form, so make sure you're not falling out of it at any. Go pause the video now and make sure that you have this form as the very last thing in your code. Otherwise, you may have fallen out of favor at a certain point earlier. Just double check that. Keep going. We have one last input type to show you, and that's checkboxes. That one easy to figure out. Same thing as before, only difference is that we renamed the IDs, the name and the value, of course, but the type is what gives it the different look. So input type checkbox is going to look like this. Checkboxes. Now there's a lot more to learn with forms, especially with form validation, but form is still a lot more. For example, wouldn't it be nice if we hit this one and then when we clicked another one, this one would click? There's a way to do that. It's very easy. Just get into forms a little bit and you'll learn a lot. And it'll be a pretty useful tool moving forward because forms are still extremely popular. You will see one in your future web dev career. So they're good things to know, but take it slow. So that settles it. We have input type of checkbox, which is a checkbox, radio, which is those circular buttons, and then input type text, which is just a field to write in text. But we gave them a name, password, email, but there's always extensions we can make. On top of making this look better, we can make a rule that says that if you put something in here that doesn't have an @ symbol with like email.com, a domain, if it's not an email, pretty much, you can make this turn red and display a message, as we see in modern forms today. So there's a lot more with forms, but that's all we're going to get into for this whole course. Look into the resources, check out the W3 schools, and that wraps up HTML for now. Next up, we're going to move right into CSS. See you then.